Hello, everyone. Today is Tuesday, March 4th. This is day two of week 22 of golf evening and weekend platoon. Currently, you started personal projects yesterday. Is that correct? Okay. Where are we?
I've deployed a Hello World and started the CI/CD process.
I've got my back end up with CRUD sign up for a person, and I'm just kind of working on the how to like send a text message basically. I've been working on that for a bit.
I got a little front and a little back. I got to work on like views and URLs and stuff like that.
Good. Everyone else?
I'm finishing fleshing out some of the mainly the delete CRUD for the authentication.
And getting all my stuff to display on the front end.
Your back end done? Or mostly done?
Yes, mostly.
Good.
I have most of my back end done. I just need to add like user and user auth. But otherwise, I have a full CRUD.
Good.
Yeah, I have my CRUD up. Just need to work on the front end.
Awesome. Mike, where are you?
Just working on CRUD operations on the back end.
Who hasn't gone?
I'm also on a crud right now.
What else? Anyone, did I miss anyone? Jism?
Yeah, I'm also working at the back end with the CRUD.
Okay. Megan? Not sure if she heard you. That's okay. We can keep back to her in a second. I want to first start off the class. Welcome. I'm going to touch on here on Justin Crippen. I don't know if that was a joke of anyone has done yet, Slackers. I don't know if that was a joke or not, but that is the first thing I was going to cover today. Your goal should be to finish this MVP as fast as humanly possible. Make sure you have a passing grade, and if you have time, go ahead and do all the extra stuff you wanted to do to it. But in order of importance, finish that MP today if possible, tomorrow, right? Because the minute that it gets done, you're technically done with the class. Yes, you still have a group project. And yes, I highly recommend everyone partake in the group project and build something awesome. But you don't need it to graduate. More importantly, you need to finish your personal project and you need to start this job search the minute that your passing grade is ready. Make sense? So I don't know if Justin meant that as a joke or not, but now you're telling me, and I'm telling it as not a joke. This is the hard part, the really hard part. Questions about that? I'll give you a couple tips that might help you on your journey. When you see jobs posted, the only thing anyone has ever realized about these, well, the only useful piece of information that I have been able to glean, and I'm not the only one, many people out there will tell you the same thing, is the earlier you apply, the better. Like if that job posting posted a minute ago, the chances that your resume, if it's good enough, gets through ATS and someone looks at it is much higher than if 5 days or 2 days have gone through. Everyone knows that. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Okay. If you didn't know that, now you do, right? So jumping on posts, on job posts, the minute that they post increases your likelihood. And you can research this. This is not a year more original. I took this from someone off Reddit, I'm sure. But that you can take to the bank, right? So if something's been posted for 2-3 weeks, good luck. Take a shot, if the resume is already ready and you have a cookie cutter, what is it? Cover letter. Sorry, I was blanking on the name, right? But chances are they got the 10, 12 people they're going to interview, right? Out of the 500 people that applied, right? And probably 7 of those have referrals. Make sense? All right. One thing. Second thing, look in places no one else would look. When I finished my personal project, I'm going to give you my story, right? Not to flex, but I'm just going to tell you my story to show you that I live what I preach, right? I was the first person in my cohort done with a personal project. I was so proud of mine. I invited Rod Levy to my presentation. I presented alone a week early, right? And the minute that I did that, I said, awesome. Oh, I forget. There's probably a video out there. Pop up. Oh, maybe there isn't. Right. I wore a tie to my presentation. Why? Just to flex on people. I was on a Zoom. He's wearing a tie. Why? To know I mean business. And I did. Anyway, that's irrelevant. But the early part is very relevant here. I finished it. And what did I used to do between the time that I presented mine? People were finishing theirs, right? And the group projects were starting. I was hustling. I was getting a hit list, right, of all the apprenticeships that were coming up, anything that had qualified, any veterans programs of all the big companies, Twitter, Microsoft. I was researching all that. I'm sure you know the Microsoft Leap one, but they have another one. I forget what it's called. The military one. Anyone think of the name? Not Leap, the other one Microsoft has for veterans. It's really famous. MSSA, right? They have a couple career tracks. I looked into that and possibly doing another boot camp, but that increased the likelihood that I got a job, right? So I used all that time wisely, right? So there's another tip in there. Look at places where no one's going to look, right? And look at places where you have an edge, right? A military affiliation, or here's an interesting one. When I was coming out, I never applied to this job because I had already gotten a job, but I used to be a teacher, right? And the technology department at a district near Austin, kind of the outskirts of Austin, right, had a technical position, right? That they did some scripting, they did some network admin, but here's the catch. You needed a teacher certification to apply for it. You know how many people know tech and have an active teacher certification? Not many. That pool is going to be much smaller. My competition is going to be much, much softer. Make sense? Those of you that have clearances, those pools are much, much softer. Right? You're not competing with a lot of H1Bs, right? And you're not competing with a lot of other people that are really, really talented. I take my shot there first. Government contracts, also smaller pools, softer pools, right? If you have any inroads into any of that, I would take my shot there first. Does that make sense? I messaged my brother, a help desk at a local community college like 2 days ago. I was like, hey, try this, right? This is not ultimately the job that you want. And here's another tip here. Early on, obviously, we will all want dev positions, right? But if I'm you, I'm taking my shots at anything even remotely tech related, and I'm continuing to apply, right? Even if it is help desk, even if it's some kind of junior product analyst role, even if it's some kind of, associate scrum master role, anything tech adjacent, I'm taking my shot at it, right? Because it's going to do a couple of things. One, even if you don't get it, you're going to work on your interview skills, and those behavior interview questions are the same for a lot of those positions. Makes sense. Some of the time you worked with a difficult coworker. What was the situation and how did you resolve it? Right. That question applies to everything. I think I might have even gotten it in teaching once or twice too. Make sense? Okay. That's going to help you. That's all I can think of at the top of my mind. Your main goal right now, right, should be to try and finish it and kind of figure out what you're going to do about this job situation. Right? Do you have a clearance? Do you not? Are you a spouse? Is there any programs that kind of lean towards hiring military spouses? I know there's some out there. Do you have a contact at Booz Allen? Look at your specific situation right? Is there a small community college in your area, right? They have a tech department, right? Those jobs are going to be far less competitive, right? Because the pool is much smaller, right? Maybe you even know someone there. Make sense? I think I had a question once. I can't remember if I was like, I dropped in for like alumni questionnaire. You know how they do those Q&A, like an alum Q&A, and someone told me, and it was recently, maybe less than a year ago. Someone asked me, how do you make sure that the job that you pick is the right fit? I thought it was the craziest thing anyone could ask me at that moment, given the market. The right fit's the one they give you first, and then you keep applying, right? That's like when someone asked me, and I went to another one. I don't know why I keep going to these things. And I got another question about, how do you leverage, how do you get maximum value out of a job offer? How do you negotiate? You know what the best way to negotiate a job offer? Have two of them. Now you have leverage. Have three of them. When I got my offer at DRW, 3 hours later, I got an AWS offer. I had a ton of leverage. Not at DRW anymore. Guess whose offer was bigger? There you go. That's leverage. That's all I can think of at the moment. Questions about everything that I just said. Questions about anything that I just said. Alrighty. I just thought of this. Last thing, and then we'll cut you loose. I'll open the breakout rooms. But the last thing, some of you might get apprenticeships. I want you to go to, if you do get an apprenticeship, I want you to go to that apprenticeship. Do your very best, obviously, that goes without saying. But once you go to the apprenticeship, there is no guarantee of an offer. And we've had several students assume, right? Positive intent, of course, right? That they were going in there and they were going to crush it and get a return offer, right? There's a lot of survivorship bias in coding boot camps, right? You only hear the big stories, right? People making it, you don't hear that many stories. You hear the people that get hustled by coding boot camps, you hear those, right? But the people that felt that they got their money's worth, but didn't get a job and went back to their old, those stories are lost, right? So the minute that you get your apprenticeship, you fist bump, right? You have a couple of Topo Chicos or alcoholic beverage to celebrate. You get ready for it. You do the very best that you can. But I want you to do one thing. I want you to keep applying, right? I want you to keep applying, even if it means long nights, because worst case scenario, you don't get a return offer from the apprenticeship and you just have an apprenticeship on your resume, which is better than nothing, but not as good as a full-time job. Right. So one of the worst case scenarios is you don't get a return offer and you never looked and you're stuck in no man's land. It's happened to a couple of our graduates, many of them, even though they won't post it on LinkedIn. Because people only post their W's, right? They don't post their L's. They're not cool. So the minute that if you get something like that, something that's either short-term or contract, right? You need to keep applying for a full-time job. No te confías, which is Spanish for like people get comfortable and they just assume they're going to get it and they end up not getting it, right? Not cool, right? Best case scenario, you're in this apprenticeship or this short-term contract role and they do extend you a full-time offer. But you were smart and you kept applying and now you have a higher offer when that time comes, right? Now you have leverage, right? Does anyone know what the number one rule of getting a job offer is? No one, this is really important. You need to know this. What's the number one rule of getting a job offer in tech, especially, but in other fields too? You ask for more money every single time. That's the number one rule of getting a job offer. That's it. There's no other number one rule. You ask for more money. Take that with you. Spread the gospel. Make sense? Excellent. That's all I have. I'm done ranting. You guys actually have made a lot of progress. I'm kind of impressed where you guys at. I was only one day. That's pretty good. See, some of you guys start over the weekend because I feel like okay, that would make sense.
Yeah, I started early too.
I started
Okay,
well
yeah,
before the
yeah.
weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, that's smart. Keep going. If you have any issues, definitely ping me. I'm gonna be just lurking around. But I'll create the breakout rooms here in a second and kick everybody out. Nice job, everyone. There you go. Open. You don't have to hear from me. All right, guys. Hopefully you had a big chunk of time to work on your personal projects. Where are we? How much progress did we make? Just anyone.
I hit a third-party API for Zen quotes, even though it only gives me 5 because I'm not going to pay him $10 a month for unlimited quotes. Yeah, I'm hitting that, and I have my own database of like sentences anyway, so it's either going to give one or the other. I got that going, and then I'm using this Celery task worker to basically run every hour. It'll check the time, and if it's the right time to send the message, it sends the message.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely don't pay for anything. I had a guy in my cohort. He had like nested loops on his API calls, and he was using the Yahoo Finance API. So I ended up paying for it a couple times. But he didn't realize because every call was not like one call. It was like 10. So I was like, how am I running out of calls so quickly? And yeah, you only need a couple examples, so that should be fine. Good. What else, guys?
We've got authentication for 3 different user types that lead to 3 different data tables that all have CRUD at this point. Now I've got to go through and start adding features.
Perfect. Right on target.
Oh, it was a tough night.
I still need to build the update feature for the CRUD, but spending time to kind of clean things up before I go forward so I don't lose things. I added stuff to my database and just making sure that all is clean before I go forward.
Nice. Anyone else?
Headache.
Danielle?
I got my backend on a EC2 instance.
Oh, good. That's awesome. So you should be able just to ping it from your front end. Sweet. Awesome, guys. You guys are making great progress. I just like to see where you guys at and make sure that you're progressing. Unfortunately, sometimes your update will be, I tried this, it didn't work. I spent the rest of the time fixing it. It's fixed, but I've made no progress. I'm in the exact same spot as, yesterday. Sometimes you will get those updates. They are unfortunate, but they do happen. They're normal. So don't get discouraged, even though it's like the most discouraging thing ever. All right, awesome. So I wrote some notes here for when I brought you back together. I was with Justin earlier, and he did something that I don't think we ever teach, but I think everyone should get comfortable with this. When you're testing a piece of core code, if it doesn't work on your application, create another file. I always call my test call it test py or test something, right? And I'll grab the little piece of code that I'm doing, and I'll just execute that file outside of my main directory to say, hey, why is this not working? And I just console log it. Sometimes if it's like JavaScript, I use NodeMon or something that continually checks the file for changes and just runs it automatically. I was like, why is this not working? Right? Because if you can just isolate it, right, you can punch it back into your big application and it should be right if you fixed it in your test file. He's the first person that I've seen do that, but I always do that, but there's something no one ever teaches you. So if you can't get your big application to work, but you have already isolated where it is, create a new file and just run it there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I should have done that earlier. I was Python manage.py shell. And I would go into the shell through the Django, and then I'd have to import it every time and like in the shell and then run it. I should have just done what you just said. That would have been way faster.
Yeah, or even create a new folder. Sometimes I have two VS codes up and start a new project on a different screen and then just install everything, kind of go through it step by step. I was like, okay, this should work. And if it does work, I know that one of those steps is missing in my main project. Okay, so don't be afraid to do that. You're going to do that at work sometimes too. And unfortunately, sometimes you'll get cloned in, two different folders, right? Because you're trying stuff out that you don't think it's going to work. You don't want to mess up your main branch. So that happens all the time. One day when we're all really good at it, we don't have to do that. But right now, I still do it. So it still happens. Okay, so snippet of code is separate file or a separate folder if it comes to it, right? Super important. If you're not doing that, get comfortable with it. It's awesome. The other thing I wanted to mention is definitely try to do your best on your personal projects and your group projects. And this has happened like a week ago, 2 weeks ago. I got a message from old Code Platoon students that I don't know if you know this, but you can actually look. I don't know how to do this because I didn't know that until they messaged me. But when Airbnb was looking at the Code Platoon applicants, they were actually forking and cloning their repos, and they were looking at your code. So I'm not saying that everybody does that, but every now and then they do. So you got to have something on there. I think we had two people, I believe, get selected for like the initial interview phase, which even getting to the interview is hard, right? Because you probably have a couple thousand people for, Jesus, I don't even know how many interviews they do, 20, 30, 40 interviews or whatever. And then after that, I'm sure you have to go through more interviews, but even get to that, getting to the face-to-face interview, you have a shot. You have a puncher's chance. But when you don't even they don't even pull your resume, then your resume is just lost in the abyss, right? You're gonna have several hundred of those. So yeah, what you're doing does matter in the off chance, right, that they look at it. And as a side note, all the stuff you're learning obviously is valuable. The last thing that I had for you is I don't think I've ever shared this story with you. We got a new peer on my team probably like 7 months ago. And he was a new hire straight out of college. And remind me if I told you this story. Did I tell you how he got his internship? Okay, so this guy was a really smart kid. He was coming out of college. He saw how the market was bad, and he applied to industries across the United States. Even I can't even remember where he lived. I think he lived outside of New York or something, or New York State. But he applied to internships everywhere in the United States, knowing that the market was bad. He ended up getting an intern, I don't even know, somewhere in the West Coast, right? So he went like hosteled Airbnb, rented some space, right? So he could do his internship where he didn't live, crushed it, came back, finished school, right? And he ended up getting a return offer in a completely different city because of his internship out in the West Coast. And that's how he ended up on our team. That was incredibly brilliant by him. Why? He casted a really wide net. He's like, hey, I'm not going to limit myself to any of these small, like where I live, right? If I limit myself to the entire United States and go kill this internship, right? And something comes of it, I'll move if I have to. Granted, he doesn't have family or kids. He's a fresh kid out of college. But that was really impressive. Sometimes when you come in and do AS, you do a bunch of interviews with people that work there for whatever onboarding reasons. And I happen to be one of the people that he had to have a meeting with, right? But I thought I've never heard of anyone doing that. That is really clever, dude. Nice job. Way to like go above and beyond. I share that story with you. I know you're not coming out of college with a CS degree, but I share that with you because if at all possible, cast the widest possible net you possibly can, right? Is at least initially. Why do I say at least initially? Because if you actually end up getting an offer, you can always say no and say, right? But at least maybe you get some practice out of it. Maybe the money's really good and you're like, hey, I can do it a year or two and then I can try to figure out the rest, right? But casting a wide net is going to help you. Let me see. Yeah, Sean living in San Francisco. I mean, whatever it is you can do, and I know people can't just get up and move. People have families, kids in school, elderly parents that are old like myself that they need to be taken care of. But that's another piece of advice if you can cast a really wide net, it's going to help you. Yeah. So, and here's another story. There was a graduate from my Papa platoon who was really great programmer, actually, really, really great. Probably one of the top ones. Not better than me, but pretty freaking good. Close. I thought he should have interviewed for everything in Chicago and come to Chicago. Right. I wanted to come with us because I was pretty good friends with him. I was like, hey, dude, if you come, it's going to be me, you, and somebody else. Or me, you, for sure. You know what I mean? He didn't want to come. He's like, he's stuck with his VA job. He hit me back later a couple years saying, hey, man, this isn't for me. I'm going to get back in tech. Could have done it 2, 3 years ago, man. You know what I mean? It's okay to take a small L in the short term if your potential is really, I mean, you bet on yourself, right? If you go to a place for a little bit and you kill it, big things can come out of it. Make sense? All right, that's all I have for you. Nice job, guys. I'll leave you the last 3 minutes. I hate when people get in the meeting and be like, hey, I'll give you the last couple of minutes back. I hate that. So I don't even know why I try to go that route. Have a good day, guys.